Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's David Ryshpan. Excuse the voice. I am just getting over a cold, but I wanted to talk about this subject today. My friend Chelsea McBride, who's a great saxophonist and composer, posted on her Instagram last week asking for the biggest lessons, both good and bad, that we remember from our teachers, from our professors as musicians. And I wanted to talk about three of the biggest lessons that have stuck with me through my entire journey, things that were said to me at classes I attended or workshops I attended that have changed how I teach music, how I create my own music, how I go about my life as a musician and artist. So I wanted to talk about those. Definitely go check out Chelsea's Instagram and her music. She's a fantastic composer and deeply involved with Jazz Composers Present. I'll have all the links below. And if you are new here and you haven't done so already, please click like and subscribe. That really helps the channel and it helps grow this community that I'm trying to build of music education here in my little corner of YouTube. All right, let's get into it. The first lesson that has stuck with me comes from a workshop I attended with the Irish bassist Ronan Guilfoyle. And this goes back almost 20 years now. This was at the IAJE conference, and I believe it was one that was in New York. He was giving a lecture on rhythm. And if you know Ronan's work and his pedagogy, he is definitely devoted to teaching rhythm. And at the time, 2005, 2006, within the jazz education sphere, there was definitely less attention paid to rhythm and time than there is now. Back then, it was really all about modes and notes and licks and harmony, and rhythm and time kind of got the short shrift. But rhythm is fundamental to any type of Black American music. I think that's very self evident and very obvious in the videos I've been putting up over the past month or so. Anyway, Ronan Guilfoyle spent an hour of just doing exercises with the metronome, clapping and singing. Excuse me, clapping on the eighth note and singing on the downbeat. I think he has documented all these things very well on his website. So I would urge you to go check it out. But the thing that stuck with me was the phrase he used of being a rhythmic human being. And I think at the end of the lecture, somebody had asked him if it was useful to practice these exercises on one's instrument. And what Ronan responded, and again, this is 20 years ago, so I'm kind of paraphrasing, but what Ronan replied was that the music is in our body, the music is in the musician and us as individuals. And if you are not a rhythmic human being, then there is no amount of banging your head against a practice room wall and no amount of shedding scales on your instrument or shedding rudiments or any technique related to your instrument that will change your inherent musicality. If you can't clap and sing with a metronome, then no amount of running scales or hand exercises or any of that on the piano will help you or will change that. The role of technique is to not impede your musicality and your ideas. Technique is not a goal in and of itself, or it shouldn't be, at least in my estimation. But what really stuck with me was this idea of being a rhythmic human being, and that the music is internal to us. The music lives in the body, the music lives in us. And the instrument is just a tool, whatever instrument we're playing, the instrument is just a tool to communicate the musical ideas that we have. And our musical technique, our technique on our instrument is only as important to not impede the communication of our ideas. And so that clinic from Ronan Guilfoyle changed everything for me. That's one of the very strong kind of before and after moments in my life. So I I thank you, Ronan Guilfoyle, and I urge all of you, if you aren't aware of Ronan's work and his pedagogy and his podcast, I will also link that below, and definitely go check all of that stuff out. His work is phenomenal. Another big lesson was in 2005 at the Banff Center with the clarinetist and composer Don Byron. And if you've been following me in my career and my channel for any length of time, you know how important that residency, that workshop at the Banff Center in 2005 was for me and my life and my career. And it's kind of impossible to recreate via this medium the exercise that Don Byron did with us. I'll try to summarize it as best as I can. What he did was he played two people. I was one of the people on stage. So he played myself and one other person, a recording under headphones. It was a recording I had never heard before. And he asked us to name in very objective terms every element of the recording that we had heard. What key was it in? What time signature was it in? What tempo was it? Was it tonal or atonal? Was it major or minor? As deep as we could go while we were listening to it. And then, based on the list of parameters that we had identified, the rest of the class had to write like a 16 bar fragment based on the parameters we had given them. And they had, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to write these 16 bars. And then we played some of these excerpts, these little etudes, back at the end of the session. And it was pretty astounding how close other people in the class who had not heard the recording got to copying this piece. And I'm not going to name the piece because I'm sure Don still teaches this exercise. But his point was that we need to be able to identify all the component parts of what make a sound. We often speak from one musician to another in kind of a shorthand. We just name drop, like play that J Dilla beat, play that Dilla swing, comp like McCoy Tyner. But what does that actually mean? And the more we understand what goes into those sounds and to that language, the more we can use it as composers and improvisers, and we can use it with intent. We can use it to really communicate the ideas that we actually have, as opposed to just writing something because we know it works intellectually, but it's not actually a melody or a harmony or a rhythm that we hear. I think that was Don's greater point in that exercise, is to really just compose and arrange and improvise with intent, and to build your inner vocabulary, to build your ability to actually truly deeply hear things, and then to communicate those things and to use those elements in service of your composition. I think the other example he gave, at the time he was writing a lot of film music, and he's like, if a director gives me a car chase and says that he wants it to be intense, he or she or they want it to be intense, my first question is, what type of intensity do you want? Do you want Wagner intense? Do you want Meshuggah intense? Do you want like 90s jungle drum and bass intense? And knowing how to do all of those things, and knowing what goes into all of those different types of intense, and being able to create, maybe something that feels like late 90s, early 2000s drum and bass, but for an orchestra, because we are deeply familiar with the characteristics and the language of what that style entails and means. The third lesson that really resonated with me was also at the Banff Center in 2005, and it was a private consultation I took with the trumpeter and composer Dave Douglas, who was the head of the program at the time. And I was really stuck on a tune. I was really stuck. I had the initial idea, and I couldn't develop it beyond the initial phrase, the initial idea. I was just totally stuck. And I met with Dave, and he said, just rewrite it. And I kind of took that as glib because, like, I know I have to rewrite it because it's not done and I'm stuck. And what he meant was no, physically rewrite it on a new sheet of paper. And what he explained is that we often have a mental block that whatever is already in our notebook, whatever is already in our DAW, whatever's already done in the session is done. And we have a tendency to move linearly forward from there, as opposed to restarting and rewriting it or reprogramming whatever, and just making that decision again, because maybe there's something in the initial idea that I could change that would unblock everything. Or maybe I didn't really intend that first phrase. Maybe that first phrase needs to change. And in rewriting it and recopying it, I get to make that decision again. And ever since then, that's how I get out of writer's block. Is if I'm really, really stuck to the extent that I was back then, I will restart. I will recopy what I have and make that decision again. I will open a blank logic file and just restart and try to replay the idea, or maybe find a new variation on it, but I will start from scratch. And that's what he meant from rewriting. One of the other things that Dave said in a lecture at the Banff Center, and this is similar to other lectures I have heard from other people, including Michael Philip Mossman, and this kind of ties into what Don Byron was talking about as well, was this idea of setting your parameters before you even start to compose, or to arrange. So Dave Douglas was saying he often thinks in projects and albums, and I think that's clear from his output. Uh, and before he starts to write for a given project or a given album, he will make a list of uh, all the things that go into that band or that album and all the things that don't. So, kind of similar to what Don Byron's exercise was about, but going towards instrumentation and orchestration. Like, is the sax player going to double, or is it just saxophone? Are there going to be electronics, or is it totally acoustic, or is it a fusion? Um, is the drummer going to play percussion? Is the bass player going to play upright or electric? Is it going to be totally through composed? Is it going to be totally improvised? Is there going to be a mix of the two? How is that mix of the two going to work? Um, any other parameters that you feel would define an album or a band or a project, have those written down before you start to compose, because there's nothing worse than opening a blank notebook or a blank DAW session, DAW file, and having absolutely no idea where to begin, because you have all the plugins in the world available to you. You have all the ideas in the world available to you, and you don't know where to focus your creativity and your energy. So having those parameters, uh, I find actually improves my creativity, because I know what I'm working with. I know maybe what language harmonically or improvisationally or structurally, formally, that I want to use. And I know what elements don't belong to this project that I might save for a different album or a different project, or for electronic musicians, like a different alias, even. So, those are the three big lessons that have resonated with me throughout my career and my life. Let me know in the comments if you've had any really kind of eureka, aha, big light bulb moments, and what they were and who they came from. Let's discuss this in the comments. Thanks again to Chelsea McBride for kind of spurring this video and this conversation. I'll have her links down below, as well as Ronan Guilfoyle, Don Byron, and Dave Douglas. I'm very, very privileged that I've had the chance to hear these three great musicians speak and play and teach. Thanks for watching and listening. My name is David Ryshpan. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.